All right, let's jump right in. What we're doing today is unpacking an ancient system. Think of it as a mental flowchart for your life. It's all about moving from a place where you're constantly being pushed around by circumstances to one where you can actually navigate them with a sense of mastery. And yeah, it's from old philosophy, but don't think of it as some dusty old theory. It's more like a practical, logical guide for developing your mind, for reaching a state of deep stability and clarity that the Source calls samadhi. So this is really the core question, isn't it? I want you to really think about this for a second. In your own life, do you feel like you're just being pulled around by events, by your own emotions, by whatever the world throws at you? Or do you feel like you have a stable center, a place from which you can actually choose how to respond? Well, according to this text, there is a clear path from that first state to the second. And we're about to walk through it, step by step.
And here it is. This is the map for that whole journey. You can see how it just flows, one stage logically building on the next. It all kicks off with dedicated practice, right? That practice leads to what's called a mature samadhi, that stable, clear mind we were talking about. And from there, it's like a domino effect. Your influence starts to radiate outwards. You gain mastery over your own senses. Your sense of identity becomes fluid, not rigid. And the final destination, total freedom. So let's break down what each of these really means.
First up, we've got this really cool idea that a truly mature mind generates a real, tangible, positive influence on the world. The text describes this using a beautiful metaphor, a system of lights. But, this isn't just poetry. It's actually a systematic way of understanding how our internal state directly impacts everything and everyone around us.
And you can see right here just how logical this whole system is. This isn't magic, it's a super clear map of cause and effect. If you cultivate the light of peace within you, what's the effect? It cures suffering. The light of stillness? That's the direct cure for distraction. Courage is the antidote to laziness, and fearlessness is what gets rid of fear and terror. You see, each quality you develop is a targeted solution for a specific human problem.
This quote just nails the whole principle. The actions you take, the qualities you purposefully work on, that's the offering. They literally shape the influence you have in the world. You become the quality that you practice. It's a perfect feedback loop. What you put out there is what you become.
Okay, let's move on to the next stage in our flowchart and see how this all connects. So once you've established this inner stability, it leads to a totally new relationship with your senses. You go from being a slave to everything you see and hear to being the master of it all.
Now this is a really profound concept. The idea is that you can enter a state of deep focus through any of your senses, say your eyes. But then you can also exit that focus back into the world of form and color without getting knocked off your center. It's a two-way street. You're no longer constantly getting yanked around by everything you see or hear. Instead, you can engage with the world totally freely without ever losing that inner stability.
And the Source gives us this perfect analogy to make the idea really land. Imagine your mind as that pure, still water. The entire world, with all its chaos, that army, can be reflected in it. The images are all there, totally clear, but the water itself, it's not disturbed at all. It stays completely calm and pure. That is what sensory mastery looks like.
So, what comes after that? Well, once your mind is stable and your senses are mastered, the next world that comes tumbling down is your rigid sense of self. Your identity stops being this fixed cage that you're trapped in, and it becomes a flexible tool you can use.
Now, I know these examples look pretty dramatic, but they're here to make a really important point. This isn't about literal, magical shapeshifting. It's about showing that a liberated mind is no longer stuck in one fixed identity. It can adapt its function, its role, even its appearance to fit whatever the moment needs, because it gets that its true essence isn't defined by any of these temporary forms.
Okay, I know what you might be thinking. This is all starting to sound a little bit supernatural, right? But what's so fascinating is that the text totally sees that coming, and it gives a really logical counter-argument. It basically says these abilities are the natural result of a huge cognitive breakthrough, not something mystical or weird. The logic here is kind of a proof by contradiction. It's saying, look, even ordinary people with all their inner baggage, magicians, rulers, even forces of nature like the wind, they can all produce incredible effects. So the argument goes, imagine how much more is possible for a mind that has completely cleared out all its inner conflicts and is powered by massive wisdom and compassion. These abilities aren't magic, they're just the logical outcome of a fully developed mind.
Okay, so this is all really fascinating stuff, but the big question is, how do we actually apply it? Well, the source material actually gives us a really clear implementation guide, and we can translate that into a modern training framework. This is where we take these ancient ideas off the page and make them work for us, right here, right now.
So first, let's get a really practical, modern definition of what we're aiming for. Samadhi, you can think of it as a highly stable, clear, and non-attached state of mind. It's the ability to handle really complex problems without panicking. It's facing conflict without getting thrown off balance. And it's being able to play all the different roles in your life without losing your core sense of who you are.
So how do we train for this? The text basically lays out a 4-part plan. First, build your light model. That means consciously trying to have an influence that brings down anxiety and boosts clarity for the people around you. Second, use targeted growth. So instead of just some vague practice, if you're distracted, you specifically practice stillness. Third, practice with your senses every single day. Try to just see things without immediately judging them or getting attached. And fourth, practice role fluidity. Really notice the different hats you wear, parent, employee, friend, and see them as temporary states you can step into and out of gracefully.
And to make this really personal, ask yourself this one simple question. When you walk into a room, when you join a conversation, does your presence tend to increase the clarity and calm in that space, or does it add to the anxiety and confusion? Answering that question honestly, that's the first step in the modern practice of what this ancient text calls radiating light.
And finally, the source gives us this crucial piece of advice about the biggest challenge on this path. And it's probably not what you think. The hardest part isn't the physical effort or the discipline. The real challenge is the mental leap you have to make to actually believe in and understand this model of reality, to really get that your inner state has a direct, systematic effect on the world, and that this kind of freedom is a skill you can actually learn.
Which brings us right back to where we started, but now with a whole new lens. Is your life a state of addiction, where you're constantly being hooked and pulled around by circumstances, by thoughts, by feelings? Or is it a state of freedom, where you can engage with the world completely but from a place of unshakable inner stability? The flowchart is right there. The choice to start walking it? Well, that's up to us.